I'm showing it's 9 o'clock. Good morning.
Good morning.
This meeting is called to order. Mr. Chairman, has anyone signed up for public comment?
Good morning. No, we have no one signed up for public comment this morning.
Thank you very much. Let's move into agenda item 3. Good morning, Ms. Miller.
Good morning, sir.
We have no cases to reconsider under agenda item 3. Is that correct?
That is correct. There are no cases.
Thank you. Let's move to agenda item 4. Consider tax liability cases. Tax liability cases under agenda item 4. I think we have 3 cases on docket 18.
That is correct, sir. The first case on docket 18 is TD-19-142-1219. Commissioner Demerson?
I disagree with the staff recommendation that the employer became a reimbursing employer on January 1, 2012. The reimbursing employer statute provides that reimbursing status is effective on January 1 of the year in which the employer became subject to the act, which is 2012, 2 years earlier than recommended. It was not the employer's fault that it took the tax department until late 2015 to advise the company of its right to elect reimbursing status. And therefore, I would hold that the employer became a reimbursing employer on January 1, 2012.
Commissioner Alvarez?
I agree with staff's recommendation.
And Mr. Chairman?
I agree with staff recommendation.
Thank you.
Chair, I want to dissent on short form.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Demerson, I have that you disagree with that result.
Yes, thank you.
The second case is TD-2006-1119. Commissioner Demerson?
I agree with staff recommendation.
Commissioner Alvarez?
I agree with staff's recommendation.
And Mr. Chairman?
Agree with staff recommendation.
And the final tax case on docket 18 is case number TD-20-024-0220. Commissioner Demerson?
I agree with staff recommendation.
Commissioner Alvarez?
I agree with staff's recommendation.
And Mr. Chairman?
Agree with staff recommendation.
Thank you. That was the last tax case.
On agenda item 5, we have no fair housing cases under agenda item 5. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir. No fair housing cases.
Thank you. We'll now move to agenda item 6. We have no wage claim cases pulled for additional discussion on docket 18.
That is correct. No pulled cases. You should already have received the short form dissent list.
I move we accept staff recommendations on the remaining wage claim cases on.
I second the motion except for those cases on which I am dissenting as reflected in the wage claim short form dissent list for docket 18.
And I concur with the chairman's motion, except for the cases in which I am dissenting as reflected in the wage claim short form dissent list for docket 18.
Motion passes with the exceptions noted.
Thank you, sir.
Let's move to agenda item 7, consideration of unemployment insurance on docket 18. You can proceed when you're ready.
Thank you.
Beginning with case 244-7971, Commissioner Demerson.
The AT decision on good cause should be reversed. The employer timely registered and appeared at the AT1 hearing, but the hearing officer was unavailable and the hearing was rescheduled. Before the resetting, the employer requested continuance because 2 of his witnesses were unavailable to appear due to a scheduling conflict. The employer testified that a TWC representative instructed the employer that all it needed to do was request continuance. The employer was not instructed to show up for the resetting without 2 of its witnesses. Since the employer appeared at the original AT1 hearing, requested a continuance for the resetting as instructed, and apparently received misinformation from the TWC representative, the employer has established good cause for its non-appearance. We should revert the AT decision. The employer had good cause for its non-appearance, resubmit the case for merits testimony.
I would affirm the AT, the employer failed to establish good cause for missing the prior hearing. The employer had several witnesses available to testify, including its CEO. for the first hearing and did not establish that it was prevented from participating in the hearing by any circumstances beyond its control. Additionally, the evidence presented on the separation issue established that the employer filed the claimant for absences that occurred over the month prior to her discharge. Further, the claimant's absences were with notice to the employer and related to her husband's cancer treatments. Therefore, we should affirm the AT no good cause, no misconduct charge.
Affirm the AT, employer did not establish good cause for AT1, no misconduct chargeback.
All right, short form.
Thank you. Short form dissent for Commissioner Demerson.
Thank you.
Next case, 2455187, Commissioner Demerson.
This case should be reheard. The current testimony does not specifically address the claimant's work status and schedule at the time she filed her claim. The claimant filed her initial claim on August 26, 2019, and the employer's initial statements indicate that the claimant was rehired in June. However, the available testimony only addresses the claimant's work separation from February of 2019. There's no testimony as to what the claimant's schedule was upon her return to work for the employer in June, whether it was based on a business need or the claimant's school and outside schedule. Therefore, before we render a decision, we should rehear this case to determine what the claimant's work schedule was when she returned to work in June of 2019, whether the claimant was PRN at that time, whether her hours were based on her personal needs or those of the business.
The decision should be affirmed. The claimant agreed to work on call as needed at the employer's request. Because the claimant was working on call as needed for the employer's convenience, her separation at the end of her last work assignment was discharged without misconduct connected with the work. Affirm the 18 on misconduct chargeback.
Rehear.
All right, we have a majority vote to rehear the case.
Next case is 2458474, Commissioner Alvarez.
The AT2 decision should be reversed on good cause issue. The claimant works as a flight attendant and is therefore away from her residence for extended time periods. She uses her father's address to receive her mail. She did not appear for the AT1 hearing because her father forgot to give her the notice of hearing for the AT1 hearing. Her non-appearance was caused by circumstances beyond her control, and her petition to reopen should be granted. Reverse the AT on good cause and a good cause for her non-appearance at AT1 and resubmit the case on the merits.
Good. The AT decision should be affirmed. On the good cause issue, the claimant received notice that the AT1 hearing packet was mailed to her correct address of record, and notice was received prior to the scheduled hearing. Although the claimant's father intercepted the notice and forgot to give it to the claimant knew the notice had been mailed, and it was her responsibility to check in with her father to see if it had been delivered. This would have been easy for the claimant to do since she was living with her father at the address of record. As such, the claimant did not miss the hearing due to circumstances beyond her control, and she did not have good cause for her non-appearance. As to the underlying issue, commission records reflect that the claimant received wages that she did not report to TWC, which corrected in an overpayment caused by the adjustment in her earnings. We should affirm the AT decision. The claimant did not have good cause for her non-appearance, earning adjustment
I lose some of the language. I can't.
$1,563.
Excuse me, Commissioner
See, nobody
Demerson.
here.
I can hear, I think what's coming from Commissioner Alvarez's microphone, and I could not hear your vote. Could you repeat your vote, please?
Sure. We should affirm the AT decision. The claimant did not have good cause for her non-appearance, earnings adjustment overpayment of $4,563.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Alvarez?
I had asked for a reverse. The claimant, a reverse claimant had good cause for non-appearance and resubmit.
Okay, I was just wondering if you wanted to add something because I thought I heard some speaking coming from your microphone. Okay, Mr. Chairman?
Reverse the AT, claimant established good cause for AT1, resubmit.
We have a majority vote. The claimant established good cause and resubmit on the merits.
Thank you.
Next case will be 1534, Commissioner Demerson.
Aye, the AT decision should be reversed. A careful review of the record reveals that the claimant mismanaged her position. The final incident occurred when the claimant previously told the employer that the price of the product was the same in Texas as they were in Alabama. However, the soda prices were actually double the Texas price, and the employer's reasonable reliance on the claimant's statement caused financial damage to the employer in excess of $550,000. Accordingly to the employer, the claimant's primary responsibility in her job as category manager was to know the price of the employer's products. The claimant did not deny this, nor did she deny telling the employer that the soda prices were the same when they were not. She did admit, however, that she was not aware that the soda prices were different, even though she would have known that information as part of her job. In addition, the claimant admitted that she negotiated the soda contract with a third-party distributor, so it was her responsibility to ensure that the correct negotiated cost was clearly outlined in the contract, which she did not do. Since the claimant had received a prior warning and her negligent conduct resulted in significant financial loss to the employer, we should reverse the AT decision, misconduct, no chargeback, adequate employer response.
The decision should be affirmed. The employer alleged that the claimant made false statements about the price of a product. The claimant testified that she accurately conveyed the price that she negotiated in the contract, and the discrepancy was caused by a rebate that was outside of her control. The employer has only made vague allegations regarding the alleged misinformation and did not include any information regarding when or how the information was allegedly conveyed. The evidence is insufficient to establish misconduct connected with the work. Affirm the AT, no misconduct chargeback.
Affirm the AT, no misconduct chargeback.
A short form.
Thank you. I have a short form dissent for Commissioner Demerson.
Ms. Miller, hold on one second, commissioners. This particular web application is particularly sensitive. When it picks up even extraneous noise through your mic, it'll switch to you as the speaker, and it's creating havoc behind the scenes in terms of feedback and some other stuff. I know this is a lot to ask, but I think we're going to have to press mute when others are talking, because I'm noticing even motion in the office behind you where people are moving about, the mic's picking that up and switching to that particular person. Hate to ask you to, but at least until we figure out how to kind of manage the sensitivity here, that's going to probably help this go a lot smoother.
Okay,
Thank you very much. Ms. Miller.
We'll mute.
Are we
May
ready
we
to
continue?
proceed? Please proceed.
Beginning again with case 246-1916, Commissioner Alvarez.
The AT should be modified. Although that I agree that the claimant didn't establish good cause for missing the first hearing, the evidence available to the appeal tribunal at the time of the first hearing established that the claimant left his temporary job in Oklahoma in order to return to Texas so that her 2-year-old son could have medical procedures he required. Therefore, the claimant's work separation was the direct result of a minor child's verified illness. We should modify the AT no good cause for non-appearance at the AT1, no voluntary leaving.
Decision should be affirmed. On the good cause issue, the claimant's confusion with the time zone language on the hearing notice was not reasonable, and her misreading of the hearing notice did not provide her with good cause for a non-appearance. As to the job separation, the facts firmly establish that the claimant resigned from her position since there was more than 2 weeks left in her job. The claimant quit to take her son to have surgery. However, there is no indication that reasonable alternative care was not available to her child, and the claimant did not ask the employer for time off before quitting. As such, the MVI provisions should not apply to this case because the claimant's job was not in jeopardy and she did not take reasonable steps to protect her job before quitting. We should affirm the AT decision. The claimant did not have good cause for a non-appearance, voluntary leaving.
Affirm. The claimant did not establish good cause for AT1, voluntary leaving.
Short form dissent.
Thank you. I have a short form dissent for Commissioner Alvarez.
Next case, 246-2433, Commissioner Demerson.
The AT decision should be modified. We voted on the good cause issue back on docket 14. As to the job separation, the claimant was discharged when he was placed on unpaid indefinite suspension resulting from allegations of client abuse. The employer reported these allegations to the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, DFPS. Although the allegations of abuse are still under review by DFPS, the employer had no choice but to discharge the claimant until the investigation is concluded. The employer could not reasonably allow the claimant to continue working with the sensitive population while the investigation was pending, as the allegations were serious in nature. Therefore, the claimant should continue to be qualified for benefits, but the employer's account should be protected from charge under Section 204.022 of the Act. We should modify the AT decision. The employer had good cause for its non-appearance, no misconduct, no chargeback. Separation was urgent, compelling, and necessary.
Ms. Miller, I'll agree to Commissioner Demerson's ruling.
I concur.
We have a unanimous decision.
Next case will be 246-4757, Commissioner Alvarez.
The AT decision in this case should be modified. On the timeliness issue, I agree with the AT that the claimant's appeal should be deemed timely because she established that the determination was delivered to her late. On the merits, the claimant established that she should be granted an alternate base period. She filed her IC on 10/18/19. The claimant had a hysterectomy on 2/27/19, for which she had missed work for a number of weeks. The medical condition that precipitated the hysterectomy arose in January 2019, which was well within her 24 months before she filed the IC. The claimant established the conditions to receive an alternate base period. Modify the AT timely claimant appeal at the AT, grant the alternate base period, and send a memo to UIO and CS to modify commission records such that payment requests made under the initial claim dated 2/23/20 are filed under IC dated 10/13/19.
The record is incomplete on the issue of whether the claimant qualifies to use an alternative base period for her initial claim of October 13, 2019. We agree that the claimant's appeal should be held timely because it involves the validity of the claim issue. Regarding the alternate base period issue, the statute provides that the relevant date is the date on which the illness began or the injury occurred. It's not clear whether the claimant was asked the proper questions or given an opportunity to address the issue of when her medical condition became so serious that she was rendered unable to work. When that section of the law was adopted, the intent was to allow an alternative base period for claimants whose medical condition due to an illness or injury got to the point where the claimant could no longer work. With an injury, the date is easier to ascertain than with an illness. The claimant's illness likely existed for quite some time before she stopped working, and the date of October 1, 2017 seems arbitrary and without any basis in documentation. Although the claimant has made a credible claim of financial inability to pay for more documentation, the documentation that exists points in the direction of a serious medical condition that prevented further work, sometimes between October 2017 and January 17, 2018, the date of her layoff. Accordingly, we should rehear this case and obtain any relevant documentation that exists, including whatever documentation was used to support the claimant's initial claim in 2020.
Modify the AT, timely claimant appeal, claimant entitled to use alternate base period.
Short form dissent, Chair.
All right, I have a majority vote, timely appeal, grant the request for the alternate base period. Commissioner Demerson, short form dissent.
Yeah, thank you.
Next case will be 246-5575, Commissioner Alvarez.
The AT2 decision on good cause issue is not supportable. The claimant was unable to participate in the AT1 hearing because her father, who lives with the claimant and has Alzheimer's disease, misplaced her notice of hearing. The claimant therefore did not know what time to call for the hearing and missed it. The claimant was unable to participate in the hearing due to circumstances beyond her control. She had good cause for her non-appearance, and her petition to reopen should be granted. Reverse the AT2, claimant had good cause for her non-appearance at the AT1, and resubmit on the merits.
Commissioner Demerson, I cannot hear you.
All right. The AT decision should be affirmed regarding good cause. Since the claimant did not take reasonable steps to keep track of the hearing notice, she did not establish good cause for her non-appearance. As to the job separation, the claimant's excessive attendance issues during the 90-day introductory period constituted mismanagement of her position of employment. We should affirm the AT decision. The claimant did not have good cause for her non-appearance. A misconduct, void the chargeback ruling.
Reverse the AT, claimant established good cause for AT1, resubmit.
We have a majority vote. The claimant established good cause, and the case will be resubmitted.
Next case will be 2465817, Commissioner Demerson.
The appeal tribunal decision is not supportable on the good cause issue. The hearing officer replayed the AT1 recording for the employer at the AT2, and the recording establishes that the receptionist who received the call for the AT1 did not hear the hearing officer ask for the employer by their full name. In addition, a statement from the receptionist indicates that the employer is identified by her last name and that the hearing officer did not state where the call was coming from. Understandably, the receptionist was confused and thought someone had called a wrong number. These circumstances rise to the level of the employer being unable to participate due to circumstances beyond its control, and we should find that the employer had good cause for its non-appearance and resubmit the case for merits testimony.
The decision should be affirmed. With regard to the good cause issue, the hearing officer contacted the employer at the number provided. The employer's receptionist told the hearing officer that the person that he was asking for was not available at that number. Communicating to a receptionist that a call was expected was a circumstance well within the employer's control, and the employer's failure to do so does not establish good cause for a non-appearance. With regard to the underlying job separation, the claimant's hours were reduced, which resulted in 40% reduction in take-home pay. The employer's statements indicated that the reduction was due to a slowdown in the employer's business and was not due to any misconduct on her part. The claimant had good cause connected with the work for quitting when her wages were reduced in excess of 20%. Affirm the AT, no good cause for employer's non-appearance, no voluntary leave.
Affirm the AT, employer did not establish good cause for AT1, no voluntary leave.
Short form dissent.
Thank you. I have a short form dissent for Commissioner Demerson.
Next case will be 2465881, Commissioner Demerson.
The appeal tribunal decision should be affirmed. While the claimant may have stated that she received the determination late due to problems with her mail, she also stated that 3 other people checked the mail every day. The claimant did not state that she asked these individuals whether the determination had been received within the period to appeal. In addition, the claimant's testimony was inconsistent. She first testified that she read the determination upon receipt. However, later, when questioned about her testimony relating to a 30-day deadline, the claimant admitted she had not read the information in the mailing. As such, the claimant's testimony in whole does not establish credible and persuasive evidence of non-receipt, and we should affirm the AT decision. Untimely claimant appeal, misconduct, no chargeback.
The AT decision is not supportable. The claimant gave uncontroverted testimony of delayed receipt of the determination. Although the claimant has roommates who check the mail, mail is checked daily and there is a clear routine to ensure that everyone timely receives mail after it is delivered. Because the 10/9/19 determination was delivered after the appeal deadline, the claimant's appeal should be deemed timely. Deem the claimant's appeal timely and remand for merits testimony.
Reverse the AT, timely claim and appeal, remand.
Short form.
We have a majority vote that the appeal is timely. The case will be remanded to the appeal tribunal and a short form dissent for Commissioner Demerson.
Thank you.
Next case will be 2467646. Commissioner Demerson.
The appeal tribunal decision should be reversed. The employer was shown text messages from the claimant, which were threatening towards another coworker and laced with profanity. The claimant admitted to making the statements in the text messages, but stated that they were sent before the employer asked her to stop discussing an altercation she had with a coworker. Even if this were true, the evidence indicates that the employer did not know about the text messages before speaking with the claimant. The fact that the text messages surfaced after the claimant was spoken to does not diminish their severity. As such, the claimant's actions constituted work-connected misconduct. We should therefore reverse the AT decision, misconduct, no chargeback, adequate employer response. In the alternative, since the employer testified that it could attempt to get the text messages in question, we could hold a rehearing to allow the employer to submit the text messages to the commission for review.
The AT decision should be affirmed. After a confrontation with the coworker, the claimant sent text messages to a different coworker complaining about the incident. The claimant sent these messages on her own personal time and before she was instructed by management to cease communication about the confrontation. Her actions did not rise to the level of misconduct. Additionally, a rehearing in this case should not be granted to obtain the relevant text messages at issue in this case. The employer had the opportunity to offer this evidence for the AT hearing, but chose not to. Affirm the AT, no misconduct, no misconduct chargeback.
Rehear to get the text messages.
All right, we have majority vote to rehear the case. We will resubmit after the rehearing.
Next case will be 2468770. Commissioner Alvarez.
The AT decision in this case should be set aside. The claimant was the victim of identity theft, and as a result, wage credits were reported as paid to the claimant that she did not earn from the employer he never worked for. The commission then held that the claimant committed fraud because he did not notify TWC of the incorrect wages. The claimant did not notify TWC of the incorrect wages because he simply did not read through the statement of benefits sent to him. His weekly benefit amount was not increased due to the incorrect wage credits, and the claimant never received any UI benefits that he was not entitled to receive based on his actual wage credits. There simply is no basis for the commission to rule that the claimant forfeited his right to benefits. The fraud and overpayment determination in this case should be held as void from inception. Set aside AT decision and void the fraud and overpayment determinations. Since the incorrect wages still appear as part of the claimant's initial claim, a memo should be sent to UIO and CS to remove the incorrect wages from his claim.
The AT decision should be affirmed. The claimant filed a late appeal from the initial determination. No valid exception to the appeal deadline applies to the claimant's late appeal. The underlying fraud ruling appears to be in order, since even if the claimant's identity had been stolen as he alleged, he had no excuse for failing to inform TWC at the beginning of his claim that the wages that were allegedly not his had not been earned by him. Accordingly, we should affirm the AT decision. The claimant filed a late appeal, fraud, overpayment.
Resubmit for a writ investigation of the identity theft allegations.
All right, we have not achieved a majority vote.
Ms. Miller, I will agree with Chairman's decision.
Thank you. We have a majority vote to resubmit the case after a writ investigation of the ID theft allegations.
Yep, good to hear.
Thank you. Unanimous.
Next case will be 2470859. Commissioner Alvarez.
The decision should be reversed. The claimant asked to leave work early because her minor child broke his arm. The employer responded by telling the claimant she wasn't dependable, taking her key and removing her from the schedule. While the employer didn't explicitly state that the claimant was fired, the employer's actions of taking the claimant's key and removing her from the schedule was a discharge and did not require further clarification. As the claimant was separated due to the illness or injury of her minor child, the claimant should be qualified for benefits. Reverse the AT decision, no misconduct, MBI.
The appeal tribunal decision should be affirmed. The claimant stated in fact finding that she was asked for her key to the business, assumed she was fired, and walked out thereafter. The claimant further discussed in fact finding that the employer never stated she was fired. Since the claimant failed to clarify her job status and assumed that she was fired, she quit without word-connected good cause. We should affirm the AT decision, voluntary leaving.
Affirm the AT, voluntary leaving.
Form dissent.
Thank you. I have a short form dissent for Commissioner Alvarez.
Next case will be 247-2042. Commissioner Alvarez.
The AT decision should be modified. The claimant was discharged while out on FMLA. The employer discharged the claimant because they didn't receive medical documentation required to extend the claimant's leave by an imposed deadline. However, the claimant made extensive efforts to get to her doctor's office to send the required medical paperwork to the employer, but the doctor's office kept dropping the ball. The claimant kept following up with the doctor's office to ensure that they would send the paperwork to her employer by the given deadlines. And the doctor's office would consistently reassure the claimant that they would send the necessary information to the employer. However, they apparently never actually did so. The claimant took reasonable steps to try to protect her job and didn't commit any misconduct. Therefore, we should modify the AT, no misconduct, no chargeback, separation due to medical verified illness.
The appeal tribunal decision should be affirmed. The claimant did not ensure that the documentation requested by the employer arrived in a timely manner. The claimant could have called the employer to confirm that her documentation had been received, but she did not do so. As such, the claimant failed to comply with the employer's reasonable request, and we should affirm the AT decision. Misconduct, no chargeback.
Modify the AT, no misconduct, no chargeback, MBI.
Short form.
I have a short form dissent, Commissioner Demerson, and should I mark that as a dissent to the separation issue, sir?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next case will be 247-3140. Commissioner Demerson.
The appeal tribunal decision should be modified. I agree that the employer filed a timely appeal. As to the late protest issue, the appeal tribunal stated that the employer's testimony was unclear and uncertain about certain aspects of its business operations. However, it was very clear that the employer repeatedly and consistently stated it never received the notice of application for benefits. The last day for a timely response in this case was December 27, 2017, which we can take administrative notice was on a Wednesday. The employer witness testified that the employer would have been open that day and that the secretary checked the mail every weekday. When asked whether the secretary received the notice, the employer witness, the manager, stated, no, they never got that. As such, the employer has presented credible and persuasive evidence of non-receipt, and we should find that the employer's protest was timely. We should therefore modify the AT decision, timely employer appeal. The employer filed a timely protest, resubmit for merits testimony. In the alternative, we could conduct a rehearing in this case to gather testimony from the employer's secretary, who, according to the employer's testimony, was checking the mail every day.
The AT decision should be affirmed. I agree that the employer filed a timely appeal to the late protest determination. With regard to the timeliness of the protest, the employer failed to provide sworn testimony from the individual who received the mail to rebut the presumption of receipt. The employer's witnesses provided inconsistent testimony regarding whether various employees were working at the time in question. And the manager's original statement to the commission was that the employer's facilities were closed for the holidays. The notice of initial claim was mailed to the employer's correct address of record, and the employer has failed to provide credible and persuasive testimony to rebut the presumption of receipt. Affirm the AT, timely employer appeal, late protest, no misconduct charge.
Modify the AT, timely AT appeal, timely employer protest, resubmit.
Thank you. We have a majority vote, and the case will be resubmitted on the merits of the separation.
Next case will be 2473182. Commissioner Demerson.
The appeal tribunal decision should be reversed. The claimant quit due to dissatisfaction with her working environment. The claimant complained to her lab manager. However, when the lab manager quit shortly thereafter, the claimant did not escalate her concerns to the HR department, but instead continued her employment for multiple months before resigning. While the claimant described uncomfortable interactions with her supervisor that allegedly took place, she did not take her issues to HR and therefore failed to allow the employer an adequate opportunity to remedy her concerns. We should therefore reverse the AT decision, voluntary leaving, no chargeback, adequate employer response.
The decision should be affirmed. The claimant and a former coworker testified to the abusive manner in which the claimant was treated by her supervisor. The claimant and the coworker also testified that they had complained to multiple levels of management, including the CEO, about the abusive treatment. The supervisor began writing the claimant up for disciplinary action after the claimant complained. After initially being evasive, the HR director admitted that the CEO had made the HR director aware of the claimant's complaints. Consistent with appeal number 1089-CA72 and appeal number 2888-CA-76, the claimant had good cause connected with the work for quitting when her continued complaints about her abusive supervisor were unresolved. Affirm the AT, no voluntary leaving, chargeback.
Affirm the AT, no voluntary leaving, chargeback.
Short form dissent.
Thank you. I have a short form dissent for Commissioner Demerson.
Thank you.
Next case will be 2473235. Commissioner Demerson.
The appeal tribunal decision should be reversed. The employer presented photographic evidence that the claimant was still in time by taking excessive lunch breaks. Even if the claimant's fact-finding statement is to be believed that he was given permission to take lunch 10 minutes early, he still violated the employer's policy since the photographs established that his lunch breaks were in excess of what was allowed, even when the alleged extra time factored in. The claimant also admitted in testimony that the pictures appeared to show his jacket. As such, the employer has met its evidentiary burden to show that work-connected misconduct took place, and we should reverse the AT decision. Misconduct, no chargeback, adequate employer response. In the alternative, we should conduct a rehearing to allow the employer to resubmit clear copies of its photographic evidence.
The AT decision should be affirmed. The employer discharged the claimant for allegedly taking long lunch breaks. However, the claimant denied taking long lunch breaks, and the employer only presented secondhand testimony and unclear hearsay evidence to support its claim. Therefore, the employer failed to establish its burden of proving that the claimant was discharged for misconduct connected with the work. Affirm the AT, no misconduct, chargeback.
Rehear.
We have a majority vote to rehear the case.
Next case will be 2473808. Commissioner Alvarez.
I would reverse the AT decision. The claimant was a school bus driver. She had to leave the job due to her medical condition. The employer acknowledges being aware of the claimant's medical issues, as she had worked for the employer before and previously had to leave the job due to similar health concerns. Therefore, the evidence established that this work separation was necessitated by the claimant's medical verified illness. Reverse the AT, no voluntary leaving.
The appeal tribunal decision should be affirmed. The claimant quit her job due to medical issues. However, the record does not reflect that she was advised by a medical professional to resign. In addition, the claimant testified that she is able to work so long as she is on her medication, but admitted earlier in her testimony that she did not take her medications when she returned to the employer because she thought everything would be fine. As such, the claimant quit voluntarily and without good cause connected with the work. We should affirm the AT decision, voluntary leaving.
And Mr. Chairman.
Affirm the AT, voluntary leaving.
Ms. Miller, short form dissent.
Yes, sir. I have a short form dissent. Commissioner Alvarez.
Next case will be 247-7705. Commissioner Alvarez.
The case should be reheard. The claimant was the victim of domestic violence. After she was assaulted by her ex-boyfriend again, she decided to quit and move to another state to avoid further violence. The claimant's actions were reasonable under the circumstances. In her commission appeal, the claimant provided documentation from a family violence center describing the domestic violence she had suffered. These documents are sufficient evidence under 207.046 to qualify the claimant for benefits. Therefore, the case should be reheard to enter the documents into record.
Other benefits may be available to the claimant, but the claimant does not qualify for unemployment benefits under our current statute. Accordingly, we should affirm the AT decision, voluntary leaving.
Affirm the AT, voluntary leaving.
Short form dissent.
Thank you. I have a short form dissent for Commissioner Alvarez.
Next case is 248-0482. Commissioner Demerson.
The appeal tribunal decision is fully supportable. The claimant refused to submit to a drug test as instructed by the HR director. In addition to the cost of the test, the employer was willing to pay a ride-sharing company to transport the claimant to the testing facility. These do not sound like the actions of an employer requesting the drug test merely as a pretext. The claimant alleges that she refused the test on principle, even though she had not been drinking. However, cooperating with the drug test would have been the easy way for the claimant to prove the employer wrong. Since it is standard for employers to have drug-free workplace policies, a reasonable employee would have known that refusing such an instruction would jeopardize her job. Because the claimant's outright refusal of the employer's legitimate request was insubordinate at best, we should affirm the appeal tribunal decision, misconduct.
The decision should be reversed. The claimant was discharged when the employer took her badge. The claimant attempted to contact the employer to return to work, but her attempts were unanswered. The claimant denied that she was intoxicated at work. The employer has never presented evidence of reasonable suspicion or any drug or alcohol policy. The claimant was not warned that a refusal would place her job in jeopardy. The evidence is insufficient to establish misconduct connected with the work. Reverse the AT, no misconduct.
Reverse the AT, no misconduct.
Short form dissent.
Thank you. I have a short form dissent for Commissioner Demerson.
Next case, 248-1108. Commissioner Alvarez.
The AT decision in this case, is not supportable. The claimant was a very long tenured employee and member of a family business. The claimant was the employer's president for many years before he was forced out of that job. Due to ongoing family disputes, the employer has repeatedly refused to pay the claimant all the wages owed in an obvious attempt to force him to leave the company. The employer's testimony consisted solely on broad generalizations of the claimant's alleged lack of work and poor attitude. They provided no testimony or documentation of any specific instances in which the claimant failed or refused to perform duties or carry out his responsibilities, except for one warning issued shortly before his dismissal. There is no documentation of any disciplinary action taken for the claimant's supposedly extensive history of failing to perform his job. It is clear that the claimant was let go due to protracted personal family disputes and not due to misconduct. Reverse the AT, no misconduct, chargeback.
We should modify the appeal tribunal decision. I acknowledge that the family dynamic between the parties is hard to ignore. However, if we look at the evidence related to the job separation, the employer has overwhelmingly established that the claimant was discharged for repeatedly failing to perform his job duties. Accordingly, we should modify the AT decision, misconduct, no chargeback, sever the adequate response issue.
Modify the AT, misconduct, no chargeback, sever, adequate response.
Short form dissent.
Thank you. I have a short form dissent for Commissioner Alvarez.
Next case is 2482894, Commissioner Demerson.
The appeal tribunal decision is fully supported by the record. As a supervisor, it was the claimant's responsibility to oversee his crew. The claimant neglected his duties by failing to be on site when required. This resulted in the crew cutting a fiber optic cable and depriving more than 2,500 customers of internet on Cyber Monday. Because the claimant should have ensured that his people were working in the correct location with all necessary information, his absence from the work site without prior approval constituted mismanagement of his position of employment. We should affirm the AT decision, misconduct.
The AT decision should be reversed. A subcontractor under the claimant's supervision continued working at a job site after the work was supposed to have ended for the day and cut a fiber optic cable in an area that had not yet been marked for utility line locations. The claimant was unaware that the subcontractor was working at the time and had no reason to know that they would work after the end of the workday. His actions did not constitute misconduct connected with the work. Reverse the AT, no misconduct.
Reverse the AT, no misconduct.
Short form dissent.
Thank you. I have a short form dissent for Commissioner Demerson.
Thank you.
Next case is 2483149, Commissioner Alvarez.
This case should be remanded. The determination was not correctly addressed to the claimant because it misspelled the claimant's name. The misspelling of a party's name should be sufficient grounds for a hearing on the timeliness issue. As the AT did not hold a hearing on this issue, the case should be remanded. Remand for a rehearing on the timeliness issue.
We should affirm the appeal tribunal decision since the claimant did not allege either delayed receipt or non-receipt of the determination. The claimant's appeal is not timely, and we do not have jurisdiction to consider the underlying merits. Accordingly, we should affirm the AT decision. The claimant filed a late appeal, voluntary leaving, no chargeback.
Remand.
We have a majority vote to remand to the appeal tribunal for a timeliness hearing.
And I'm a short form dissent, Chair, on the remand.
Yes, yes, sir. Commissioner Demerson, I have short form dissent.
Thank you.
Next case is 2487131, Commissioner Demerson.
We should reverse the appeal tribunal decision. The claimant was discharged for making racially charged comments in the workplace after warning. The claimant's attempts to minimize her actions, but the preponderance of the credible evidence established that the claimant engaged in behavior that contributed to a hostile work environment. Accordingly, we should reverse the AT decision, misconduct, no chargeback, adequate employer response.
The AT decision should be affirmed. The employer presented no firsthand testimony regarding the alleged inappropriate statements that the claimant made to a coworker. The claimant denied making the alleged comments under oath. Therefore, the employer failed to meet its burden of proving that the claimant committed any misconduct connected with the work. Additionally, the employer had the opportunity to have the coworker testify, but chose not to. As such, there is no reason to rehear this case for additional testimony. Therefore, the AT should simply be affirmed. No misconduct, chargeback.
Reverse the AT, misconduct, no chargeback, adequate employer response.
Short form dissent.
Thank you. I have a short form dissent for Commissioner Alvarez.
The last case will be 2490331. Commissioner Alvarez?
The AT decision should be modified. The evidence clearly established that the claimant left this job due to a medically verified illness. The claimant had been experiencing neck pain due to the demands of the job, had sought treatment for his condition, and was ultimately advised by his doctor to leave the job in order for his neck to heal and for no additional damage to be done. Therefore, we should modify the AT, no voluntary leaving, no chargeback.
I agree with Commissioner Alvarez, modifying the 18, no voluntary leaving, no chargeback, MVI.
Modify the AT, no voluntary leaving, no chargeback, MVI.
Thank you. We have a unanimous decision. And that was the last pulled case for unemployment insurance benefits under docket 18. You should have already received the short form dissent list for docket 18.
I move we accept staff recommendations on the remaining UI cases on docket 18.
I second the motion except for those cases on which I am dissenting, as reflected on the UI short form dissent list for docket 18.
And I concur with the chairman's motion, except for the cases on which I am dissenting as reflected in the UI short form dissent list, docket 18.
The motion passes with the exceptions noted.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much. This brings us to the end of agenda items 3 through 7. Let's take a very brief break to reset for the rest of the meeting. We ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, we're back in session. This is agenda item 8, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding jobs and education for Texans Advisory Board recommendations concerning fiscal year 2020 applicants for community, technical, and state colleges and independent school districts.
Good morning, Chairman Daniel, Commissioner Alvarez, Commissioner Demerson, and Mr. Cerna. For the record, my name is Emily Clodfelter in the Office of Employer Initiative. I'm here this morning to give a brief update and summary from the JET Advisory Board meeting that was on April 16th, 2020. The Advisory Board reviewed and approved the mass list of ISDs and IHEs of applications and directed staff to move forward with awarding these grants with the ability to move down the list as recaptured funds become available during the contracting phase and to utilize the remaining IH funds to fund additional ISD grants. 2019, the Advisory Board did note that the occupations listed in this mass list are essential services and that these grants will help with future training needs. Advisory Board also took action to split the funding 60% ISDs and 40% IHEs for future RFAs. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Comments or questions?
No questions. The only comment I say is great work by the JET Advisory Committee.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to commend the advisory board committee for the work that they're doing. Also to congratulate and commend Emily and Dale. And then lastly, just to commend Dr. Gardner, who is off the advisory board. I think he's going to be retiring for the work that he's done over the years. I had the opportunity actually to manage with Emily leading the charge that program. And Dr. Gardner from the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board was a very instrumental part of that from its inception. So I'd like to thank him for his work on that committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
We're moving to agenda item 9, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding purchasing for people with disabilities, program temporary suspension of Texas Code 80641F9 and Texas Human Resources Code, section 122.013C3, direct labor hour ratio due to COVID-19 pandemic.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mr. Cerna. For the record, I'm Brooks with the Vocational Rehabilitation. Today, I'm bringing for your consideration and possible action a request regarding the Purchase from People with Disabilities Program, or PPD program, for a temporary suspension of 40 TAC 80641F9 and Texas Human Resources Code 122.013C3, governing the PPD direct disabled labor hour ratio. This request is due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Texas state agencies that provide essential services are served by the products and services offered by the PPD Community Rehab Programs, or CRPs. Because of the COVID-19 emergency, the increased demand by some agencies is resulting in additional production requirements on essential product and service contracts. Additionally, CRPs are having difficulty in finding enough employees with disabilities to fulfill contract labor requirements. Some of the reasons for these includes that a number of these employees are sourced from group homes or rehab, local rehab centers, and they're shut down. Also, we have a number of employees that are from high-risk groups due to chronic illnesses such as diabetes. Because of the reduction in availability of employees with disabilities, given the 75% direct labor hour ratio requirement, CRPs must currently use internal staff and other individuals who do not have disabilities to continue to successfully perform these contract requirements at this important time. It's worthy of note that the much larger federal version of our PPD program, titled Ability One, is also experiencing disabled labor availability challenges and has taken action similar to what we'll be bringing to the Commission today. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, staff seeks direction in addressing the current challenges of CRPs and the PPD program and meeting the required 75% DLH direct labor hour ratio performed by individuals with disabilities. A request for temporary suspension of regulatory statute or rule hindering action in coping with this disaster may be submitted to the Office of the Governor pursuant to Texas Government Code 418.016. Staff proposes a request to the Office of the Governor that both 40 TAC 80641F9 and Texas Human Resources Code section 122.013C3 be temporarily suspended as follows. Consistent with the Ability One Commission, establish a minimum of 35% DLH ratio for each CRP contract that must be performed by individuals with documented disabilities beginning March 1, 2020 through May 30th, 2020. Retroactive application of the temporary suspension is proposed to provide support to CRPs that have already had fewer available employees with disabilities, and this occurred shortly after the onset of the pandemic in Texas. After May 30th, all CRPs that do not meet the 75% DLH ratio requirement and anticipate a continuing shortage of employees with disabilities would be required to submit to WorkQuest, the central nonprofit administering CRPs for the program, a request including a justification for adjusted DLH ratio percentages for the next 90 days. That would be June 1 through August 31. The justification must include the following: the DLH ratio achieved by the CRP for each month of the previous quarter, March through June, the measures the CRP has taken to ensure the safety of its employees, the measures the CRP has taken to employ individuals with disabilities at the 75% ratio, the reasons the CRP anticipates it will be unable to meet the 75% ratio in June through August, and the DLH ratio that the CRP anticipates it will be able to achieve during June through August. WorkQuest will evaluate each request and seek clarification from the CRP if needed before making a recommendation to TWC that the request be approved, denied, or approved with conditions. TWC staff will then evaluate each request and approve or deny with conditions. The approve, deny, or approve with conditions. If approved, staff will seek direction from the condition. If approved, staff will seek direction from the commission regarding continuation of the suspension or other remedy should the need for COVID-19 containment measures extend into the fall of 2020 past August 31 and continue to adversely impact the CRP compliance with the DLH ratio. That's all I have. I'm certainly open to any questions you may have.
Comments or questions?
No questions here.
None here.
Do we have a motion?
Yes, Chairman. I move that we request that the governors temporarily suspend Texas Human Resources Code Section 122.013C3 and 40 Texas Administrative Code Section 806.41F9 and substitute the standards outlined in the discussion paper for considering CRP compliance with the direct labor hour ratio.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We're unanimous. Thank you. I'm showing that staff does not have anything to discuss for agenda item 10, so let's move to agenda item 11. Discussion, consideration, possible action regarding guidance on resource utilization and implementation of services and strategies to target disaster relief efforts and public health emergencies, including those funded with the Department of Labor's Disaster Dislocated Worker Grant. The first item up is temporary TWC COVID-19 essential worker child care.
That should be Reagan. Mr. Chairman, maybe while Reagan is trying to figure out a technical issue, we can move on to Clay Cole for an update, and then after that, it'll be Courtney and Cheryl for updates.
Sorry, Ed, can you hear me now? I
Yes.
am unmuted. Thank you, Julia. All right, Commissioners, for the record, Reagan Miller with the Child Care and Early Learning Division. The first item we have today is a discussion paper on the length of time families will receive COVID essential worker child care. We're seeking your direction on requesting that the governor approve 2 waivers of TWC child care rules. First, a waiver of Section 809.54A regarding the standard 12-month minimum eligibility period. And second, a waiver of Section 809.54B regarding continuity of care. Boards will be authorized to approve COVID essential worker child care for 3 months. And as this child care is structured as a 3-month temporary benefit, the continuity of care rule would also not apply. Finally, we note that the 3-month eligibility period may not be extended by the boards. We will continue to review and analyze COVID essential worker care, and we'll determine if we need to recommend any eligibility extensions in the future. I'd be happy to answer any questions on this.
Comments or questions?
No, Chairman.
None here.
Do we have a motion?
Chairman, I move that we waive the continuity of child provisions of 40 Texas Administrative Code Section 809.54A and 809.54B with respect to children of COVID-19 essential workers, as discussed by staff. I further move that we authorize a 3-month eligibility period for COVID-19 essential workers not subject to automatic redetermination and provide staff the authority to recommend eligibility extensions based on ongoing needs analysis, also as discussed by staff.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. We're unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Our second discussion paper concerns the definition of healthcare workers as it relates to COVID essential worker child care. When you approved the prioritization of child care services on April 7th, we classified healthcare workers within the second priority. Since then, we've received questions about which healthcare workers are covered under this definition. We are seeking the Commission's direction in how we prioritize COVID funding and clarifying that the second priority for healthcare workers covers those workers who are delivering services to COVID patients as described in the discussion paper. All other healthcare workers included in the CISA essential worker definition would fall under the 5th priority. This clarification will ensure that we are prioritizing those healthcare workers whose work involves the most risk for occupational exposure. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Comments or questions?
No questions, Chairman.
None here. Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the definition of COVID-19 healthcare worker and the prioritization of childcare services as discussed.
I second the motion.
Been moved and seconded. We're unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. And our final discussion paper is focused on how we support our child care providers who previously served subsidized children, but who have temporarily closed due to COVID. The Federal CARES Act explicitly authorizes the use of funds to support providers who have experienced decreased enrollments or closures due to COVID. In addition, we can also use our regular CCDF quality improvement funds for supply building grants in response to emergencies. Currently, we are continuing to pay providers who have closed, and our payments are based on the number of active child care referrals that were in place at the time the program closed. Right now, we're paying around 1,685 closed providers who have about 28,000 active referrals for child care at a cost of approximately $23 to $24 million per month. Based on our existing payment structure, providers who were previously serving a larger proportion of subsidized children receive more than providers with smaller proportions. We implemented this structure initially because it was expedient and it provided a mechanism to quickly implement a process whereby we could continue to provide this critical financial support to the child care industry. Since then, we've had some time to review our payment structure and believe we now have an opportunity to make some revisions. So our goal is to help defray the fixed facility costs that providers have so that they can continue to support those fixed costs and eventually reopen. Our proposal would replace our current mechanism of paying closed providers based on the number of kids they were previously serving to creating an equitable standard of payment through a new COVID child care stabilization grant. There will be some conditions placed on the receipt of these funds, such as not paying providers who receive the SBA PPP loan funds, and also not providing funds to providers who don't have fixed facility costs. For example, you have providers that operate after-school programs in space that's donated where they're actually within a school. We're also seeking your guidance on setting this up as a 3-month program, June through August. The grant amounts are based on the size of the program, the average cost of care from the market rate survey based on the 75th percentile for that type of provider, meaning a licensed center, licensed home, or registered home for each workforce area. We also looked at a national study that was issued, which noted that child care providers' typical costs for fixed facility costs are about 9% of their budget. So based on this, we looked at the license capacity of the program and then would use 9% of the program's estimated operating costs based on full enrollment and would use that to calculate a monthly amount. We estimated in attachment 1 that this methodology has a fiscal impact of $11 million per month. We would cap the grants at $10,000 per provider, but we would also provide a bonus to Texas Rising Star program. So they would be allowed to receive up to 5% over and above that $10,000 cap. We also want to make sure that providers get a sense of how differently these funds would be implemented based on the type of the program, the size of the program. So on attachment 2, we included some examples based on a licensed center with a capacity of 50 and a capacity of 100 for how much those providers of that size would receive. Obviously, we're going to customize this based upon a provider's actual capacity. I also want to emphasize that while this establishes a more conservative approach to funding for closed providers, any provider that chooses to reopen can revert back to the payment structure that's in place for open providers. So they would revert back to receiving payment for all active referrals that were in place at the time they closed, plus the 25% enhanced reimbursement rate that you previously approved. So we want to ensure that there is still that same existing financial incentive for providers to reopen to provide services to essential workers. This is a change, a big change from our current process for plainclothes providers. So we're recommending an implementation date of June 1st, making sure that we're working with the boards and notifying child care programs about this change so they can make determinations about whether they want to consider reopening prior to that June 1st implementation date. We'll also need to work very closely with the boards in the coming weeks on the actual application process and how we're structuring those payments. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Comments or questions?
No, Chairman.
Chairman, I'd just like to thank Reagan and the team and the strike team for the work that they're doing, continuing to do in this area, this very important area.
Okay. Reagan, I heard you mention a 3-month program beginning June 1st. I'm wondering if we should revisit this every 30 days or at the first of every month to understand the effectiveness of it and decide if that's the path we need to continue down the 3-month stretch. I'm concerned about, we have a change in it. Businesses are beginning to reopen. Schools are talking about, their reopening plans, including colleges and universities. I'm just, instead of doing change, we're pretty open-ended now. I certainly like this particular approach because it gives some parameters to our strategy, but I'm just a little concerned about an 90-day block and not use it every 30 days. What are your thoughts on that?
We can certainly structure this in 30-day increments. We don't know exactly what's going to happen over the summer, and certainly a 30-day program would allow us to continue to review and monitor this and make any adjustments as needed.
So, okay, I mean, my idea here would be that it's definitely a 90-day program with 30-day, or let's call it a 3-month program so we can get all the days of the 3 months, but a 3-month program where we evaluate monthly the effectiveness of it. That's in effect saying the same thing, I think. I want daycare providers, I want them to understand, we're not going to go from June 1st to the end of June and then just immediately scrap it and go to something new. I need for them to have a little bit of assurance for operation. At the same time, I just want us to have more frequent monitoring of the situation.
Yes, sir, we can do that.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Motion?
I move that we cease payments to closed providers on June 1st that are based on the number of active referrals in place at the time the provider closed and implement a COVID-19 child care stabilization grant, initially authorized for 3 months, June through August, authorizing grant parameters and grant calculations as described by staff.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded. We're unanimous.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we have Clay Cole up next to provide an update, and then after that, it'll be Courtney and Cheryl.
Okay.
Good morning, Commissioner Daniel, Commissioner Alvarez, Commissioner Demerson, Mr. Cerner. For the record, Clay Cole, Unemployment Division. Record claims payouts and UI continue. We've got a big couple weeks ahead of us, too, with the deployment of the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation Program that will provide an additional 13-week extension of federal benefits for individuals that exhausted regular state UI benefits dating back to 2019 claim exhaustees. We continue to add staff, increase system capacity as we can. Our partner call centers continue to increase agents and the skills of those agents, helping improve our customer deliveries. Yesterday, they handled almost double the number of calls compared to TWC agents, which is really helping us on the back end as our experienced staff can focus more on some highly skilled assignments. UI continues to work closely with communications, finance, and operational insights on messaging outreach and data analytics for reducing and preventing unnecessary calls to our call centers. This week, we are starting outbound calling of folks who we believe may require some high need services. We're also UIIT and others are working on deploying Larry the Bot 2.0, which will help us collect some individual information that really ties into identifying some of those high customer needs that will also help with our outreach efforts. UI is actively working on plans for Texas opening back up for business. UI and IT are finalizing a website portal to capture information regarding job refusals. And finally, we've just seen a big improvement in our assignment productivity, which is enabling us to shift resources to other needs, such as processing DUA, PUA proof, and helping better organize some of our customer inquiries that are coming from all different directions. But again, just a big thanks to all our volunteers at TWC and externally that are really helping us make big strides in improvement in service delivery. And this concludes my update, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
No questions. I just have a comment. I just wanted to thank Clay for the update and good information that he's provided us.
No questions, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Clay.
Good morning, Commissioners. Courtney Arbor, Division, making sure you can hear me okay. Okay, good. I have an update for you from what TWC Workforce Division, obviously in coordination with a number of other divisions in the agency and the local workforce boards are doing in the COVID response. I'll start with TWC activities specifically. We have increased service capacity working with Department of Operational Insight and IT to know what we think the capacity needs to be, and we're working to make sure that the capacity of WIT is adequate to handle the workload that we know it is about to experience. We did testing before implementing Work in Texas, but obviously that was under non-COVID circumstances, so we're really beefing that up. We continue to message to social media so the public understands how to reach Texas Workforce Commission and Workforce Solutions offices, both employers and job seekers. We published a list of top jobs for each local workforce board that have been published in the last 30 or so days, so that they have a good idea of what employers are ramping up their hiring right now. And we've instructed the boards to really dig into those lists and make sure that they're helping employers get registered in Work in Texas, get the help they need in recruiting and hiring, and also build some short-term training programs. We provided supply demand information with those lists to boards, and we've asked them to build or procure some short-term training programs to really build up the workforce in those areas if our labor market data shows that we have a shortage in any one of those areas. We've developed checklists and provided them to boards for reopening. When they decide to reopen their office, we've asked that they go through a checklist process that assures the safety and health of the customers and the staff, and that they share that with us before opening so that we can take a look at it with our risk team and make sure that we provide feedback to them in areas where we think that they need to take another look before opening their doors. We are guiding strategies for service delivery with the boards and troubleshooting any issues that they've run into, both while they're working virtually and in anticipation of possibly, returning to bricks and mortar offices. Regardless of whether they are providing virtual services or returning to the offices, we know that there is an influx of activity coming our way as a workforce system as employers reopen their hiring and the economy opens up. So we're providing guidance on strategies and helping them troubleshoot. We have posted applications and we've already received applications on the funding that you all approved. I'll give you some highlights of that in just a moment, but we quickly got that information out to the public or to the eligible applicants so they could begin applying for the WIOA, the skills development funding, and then we've got the grants going out for the Department of Labor disaster grants. That was 12 million. So total, we've got 12 million in WIOA, up to 10 million in skills, and 12 million in disaster grant funding. We're heavily focusing on training in all of those grant awards. There are some other required activities, such as short-term employment in very valuable efforts, such as people can be hired and paid to do short-term work through these disaster grants where they're providing tracing activities in local communities with public health. They can work at public food or food banks and also provide driving. They can be paid to drive and provide medication and food to people who are homebound. So there's a lot of valuable activity happening. But outside of that, we're really heavily focused on training to make sure that people that need upskilling are getting that. The grant management staff at TWC are very aggressively managing the grants that are COVID related. We have provided information to all the grantees, boards, adult ed, and all others about our interest in making sure their ramp ups happen very quickly in these grants. If they need to buy supplies or equipment, that they do it quickly. If they need to procure training, they do it in a much more compressed timeline than maybe they're accustomed to doing. And we've made everyone aware that if we see that a grant can't meet its original deliverables timely or at all, we will quickly come to you, commissioners, to move that funding to grantees who have a need and are able to meet that demand quickly. So that's a real priority for us. The boards are taking a number of steps, as they have been doing, to outreach employers, sharing information about job candidates in our system, are using our system, or who we know have the skills that the employers are looking for. They are providing virtual hiring events for employers, other virtual resources, since many offices and even our partners have not yet returned to work, where they're continuing to expand their virtual opportunities, building those short-term training programs that I mentioned earlier and making the news of those available to employers and job seekers. And through the town halls that you all have hosted, and they are locally hosting with invites to you all, they're sharing information with small businesses about the COVID supports that are available. Quickly wrapping up what the boards are doing, it's all about training. It's all about outreaching claimants and other job seekers to make sure they have an application ready and work in Texas. The message we are trying to share with the public is just gear up, get your applications ready, get your resumes ready, because as the economy opens, employers really will be looking to you for to bring you on board. Boards are also highlighting repeatedly what they're doing on social media, whether they're in their office or providing services virtually. All these services are still available, and so they're continuing to highlight that on all the social media and local media. They have listed Jobs Now, is what they're calling it, on their workforce website, Workforce Solutions websites, so that the public, when they first see that website, can gather information about all the services available, but particularly those where hiring is taking place right now. We are working with Office of Employer Initiatives. When an employer contacts Dale and his team, or any of us, we link up with Dale's team and consider best ways to link with that employer, whether it's through training opportunities, through skills development, or other funding source. And if they are just in need of hiring support, we link them through a phone call with us to the board, and we have we help make that connection, and then have the board follow up with us, and we follow up with the employer to make sure that the employer's needs are being met. We want to make sure that those connections are strong and that we're following through. Cheryl will talk a little bit about what we're encouraging the boards to do as far as what we're calling a system check, sort of a top to bottom look at their operations and how they're engaging with all of their partners. I won't go into that since I know she will highlight it. We are also in the workforce division, looking at work in Texas and seeing where people tend to get hung up, whether it's in the initial part of the registration or resumes, and helping boards to troubleshoot that for people that might not have a lot of skills in resume building. We're helping to get through that, or give them some tips on how to do that. The COVID funds update quickly. Last week we put out the application for the WIOA funding, as I mentioned earlier, and we have 4 applications in-house already. Those are focused on training, layoff aversion, and some rapid response activities for employers. These grants can help employers with any number of expenses to try to help offset some of their costs related to PPE, providing incumbent worker training, and also we've got at least one project in-house for manufacturing and electronics. So we've got 2 skills development funding applications in-house. Also, those are incumbent worker training programs, and these funds have been made available, as you know, to try to help employers with their upskilling, or any organization that can provide training to employers that we know have the need. And so we're going to see healthcare software development, other information technology trainings come in with that. There's a number of other grant activities underway right now, but I wanted to just give you a highlight that the WIOA funding and the skills development funding has been well received, and we've already got 6 applications in-house and many more in development, and that was since it posted last week. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments?
Great report, Courtney. Thank you for the update.
Courtney, thank you for what you're doing with the employers. I appreciate you and the boards reaching out in that regard. I want to circle back with you eventually on the virtual. Even in this present time, we do have employers that are still possibly located in Texas and finding available labor pool employees to work there. Most important, and so virtual job fairs, things along that line. I want to visit with you about some of the best practices that might be out there, so that we can share that with those digital employers that are looking at their home. Thank you for your report.
Chairman, I have something. Chairman, if I could ask Courtney, I received a notice from the mayor of DeSoto asking for a virtual job fair. So I was wondering, Courtney, if I could forward this to you, this request, and then if you can just inform the local board. Apparently they need some assistance from our end, and so they're asking if we could reach out to them.
Yes, sir. Please send that to me, and I'll contact you after the meeting.
Thank you.
Hey, Courtney, this is Ed. Are you going to discuss the dislocated worker grant?
The WIOA oh, I did not highlight that, did I? Those grants are in development. That is a $12 million grant that goes to the 16 workforce development boards. I talked a little bit about the short-term job paid work positions with the tracing activity and the food bank work and delivering food and medication to the homebound. That is part of that disaster grant. And in addition, the boards will be providing short-term training through those grants. We are still developing some of the specifics on that, but we're encouraging boards, in addition to the short-term paid work that the cities and counties and other organizations can benefit from, that we build out short-term training programs based on what they know about the supply demand in their area and the local needs.
And then are we bringing that back to the commission after we get those plans from the board?
Yes, sir. Yes, we are. Jen's team is finalizing the plans with each of the 16, and we'll bring that forward. Jen is on, Ed, if you need to.
No, ma'am.
Actually, Jen is on, and I think she would like to make comments here.
That's all I need right now.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, unless there's something that you need specifically on the dislocated worker grant, we're going to bring it back once we have a little bit more detail. So it's what is already laid out.
So we're not going to take on this today?
No, sir.
I believe Jen has let me know that she does have the amounts for you and a more specific overview if you would like to take action on it, and that will allow us to release those awards.
Mr. Chairman, your choice.
Let's do it.
All right, go ahead, Jen.
Good morning. This is Jen. Can you always hear me?
Yes, Jen, we can hear you.
Okay, excellent. Of the 28 workforce boards, 16 have requested additional assistance through the Disaster Dislocated Worker Grant to serve individuals and communities impacted by this pandemic. As Courtney noted, Disaster Dislocated Worker Grants provide disaster relief and humanitarian assistance employment, as well as employment and training services as appropriate to minimize the employment and economic impact of declared disasters and emergency situations. Boards shared their employment and training strategies with TWC, as well as the number of participants they anticipated serving through this grant. Staff will bring regular updates to the Commission on the progress of these awards. Today, staff seeks approval from the Commission on the use of $12 million in Disaster Dislocated Worker Grant funds for 16 boards. Any questions?
Questions or comments?
No, Chairman.
Jen, our staff's been briefed on that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I appreciate regular updates. When we come back next week, we would like to have an update on how many of the temporary jobs are filled and a discussion on any that aren't, how we would bring those dollars to training.
Okay, so the grant awards will go out today as soon as we've gotten approval. And so the temporary employment would likely start happening in the next several weeks.
We'll go ahead and revisit it next week and see where we're at with things.
Okay, yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, we will need a motion here.
Chairman, I move that we approve the distribution of $12 million in disaster dislocated worker grant funds for 16 boards outlined by staff and in a manner consistent with the intent of the grant.
I second the motion.
Been moved and seconded. We're unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sorry for the confusion.
Not at all.
Last report from Cheryl on VR's plan.
Good morning. This is Cheryl Fuller for the record with the Vocational Rehabilitation Division. And good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Alvarez, Commissioner Demerson, and Mr. Cerna. I'm here this morning to give you an update on the next steps that VR is planning to implement as we hopefully enter the recovery phase from COVID-19. Our plan really has three broad categories. One is communication and outreach to customers and employers. Another is system coordination, and a third is our service delivery strategies. I've talked to you in past updates about the communication and the outreach to our customers and our providers to make sure they know we're still open and providing services and available for them. What we plan to do now and moving forward is, in addition to keeping that communication updated, have even more targeted outreach strategies so that we can reach out to our new customers that may not have participated in VR before but may need it, current customers, as well as former customers. And a couple of ways we're doing this is, as we are talking to both applicants as well as our current customers, we are specifically asking them if they have had a COVID-19 related job loss. And if so, we're identifying that in our system, and it allows us to more rapidly engage them when opportunities arise. But we're also working with DOI to see what sort of information we can glean about those who have exited our system in the last few years who may have been laid off. And so we can reach out to them and see if they need VR services to re-engage with employment. When it comes to employers, we also plan to coordinate with communications and with you to update our agency's hireability campaign to focus on resources and strategies that can support employers as they reopen and rebuild, and encourage them to do so by engaging a diverse and inclusive workforce. So we want to make sure that that information for employers is active and current and speaks to the needs they may have. And this, we anticipate, will maintain awareness about the We Hireability Recognition Program and build momentum toward a revised launch date. With regard to system coordination, it's incredibly important that we as VR continue to be good partners to the rest of the programs that are in the workforce centers. And so one of the things Courtney and I have partnered together to do is ask both boards and VR staff to do what you heard Courtney refer to as a systems check. And what we mean by this is that as we see an increase in individuals that are looking for work to re-engage in the workforce, it's very important that if they need a particular service, they can get to us timely and efficiently. So we've asked boards and VR staff, as well as other partners, to do a systems check, make sure that there is no problem getting customers to VR or other programs when they call in. So are we in the board's call trees and the center's call trees, for example? Our receptionist staff fully prepared with the information they need to smoothly refer? Is there signage in the centers as we begin to see customers in the centers again to make sure they know what's there for them? Also on board websites, is information readily available so that we can get folks that may be eligible for VR services so that we can help them re-engage with the workforce as quickly as possible? And then finally, looking at our referral processes, making sure that from each of the programs, VR particularly, not only can we get those referrals and timely respond to them from our other partners, but we can make them to other programs that may benefit our customers. Our third set of strategies is around service delivery. One, we are talking to our staff to make sure we are ready to proactively partner with the boards as they begin to hold hiring events or continue to hold hiring events like those virtual job fairs or other activities, to make sure we're there to be a resource and we're able to tell our customers about those opportunities as well. We're looking at other service delivery strategies like paid work experience. This may be particularly helpful for our customers as they engage or re-engage in work. And it can be an effective strategy not only for youth, but for adults who may need additional supports, either due to the nature of their disability or due to lack of work experience or due to work experience in another field. And now they're trying to go into a field that they don't have as much experience in. We're also looking at the job placement and training activities that our providers deliver for our customers. You are aware that several weeks ago we implemented some temporary exceptions to our standards for providers and our VR services manual to really support remote service delivery. This has been an incredible learning experience for us, and some of the things we learned is that maybe we need to take some of what we're doing forward on an ongoing basis because it is more efficient. For example, remote service delivery for our providers, where that makes sense for our customers. So we're evaluating those exceptions to see what we've learned and what may need to stay, because it actually opens up additional opportunities, which will be very important. We're also looking at targeted training services. Some of our customers, due to the nature of their disability, may need some additional instruction on social distancing or how to engage in remote service delivery. And so we are looking at how we might need to develop some specific vocational adjustment training services that our providers can deliver to make sure our customers are as prepared as possible. And lastly, I would just say with both remote work and remote service delivery, we are learning so much. And we're learning some things that probably we would love to have learned another way, but certainly point us to how we can do a better job in the future of being flexible and using technology to both work and serve our customers. So we will continue to do that and make sure we are keeping what we have learned and is working well. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Comments or questions?
Great work.
Charles, as always, let me know what I can do on the employer side. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cerna, do we have anything else to report today?
No, sir, not under this item. I've got one little report under executive directors, but I think that comes a little bit later.
Okay, actually, I'm showing we're through with this agenda item. Let's just move to the executive director report.
The only thing I wanted to report very quickly was that we did open our main building to the public. We have had some people come to visit to try to drop off information concerning unemployment insurance claims. We've set up the appropriate protocol for making sure that they remain safe and our employees that are working with them, our contractor, remain safe. And all seems to be going very well. Also wanted to report that we'll continue to encourage staff to telework if possible until we can get the building. This is an older building, so it's kind of difficult sometimes to get right amount of social distancing in certain common areas. But we'll continue to work on that, and we'll slowly bring staff back in. But we continue to work at full force and providing all the services that we normally have been providing before the emergency, during the emergency, and we'll continue to do that after the emergency, as you've heard in these reports. That's all I have to report.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ed, commissioners?
No questions, sir.
None here.
Is there any other order of business that should come before the commission today? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
It's been seconded. We're unanimous and we are adjourned.
All right.